Here I'm going to analyze an amateur player's Spec tennis forehand. So we're going to break this down into parts, and then I'm actually going to jump on the court and show you the corrections that I think he can make to improve his forehand. And so the first thing you're going to notice is that he takes the paddle back with just one hand on it. And the problem with this, the problem with not having the non-hitting hand on the paddle as it's going back, is it doesn't help him to turn his front shoulder. We actually want that front shoulder to coil as the paddle's going back. This produces a healthier and more powerful swing and makes it so that he doesn't have to rely on just swinging with the arm. The next thing I want you to look at is his feet are side by side. I'm going to talk more about the open stance when I jump on the court, but then look at his contact point, how far in front it is. It actually creates an uncomfortable contact point because of this. So what I'd like to see instead of this is that he actually takes a step. Instead of making contact with his feet like this, is that he actually takes a step forward into the court to close his stance and make it more comfortable. So now let's discuss some adjustments that I'd like to see this player make to improve his forehand. The first thing I'd like to see is the non-hitting hand on the paddle as he is preparing for the shot. And the reason for this is it causes that front shoulder to turn, so it connects the upper body to the swing, makes the swing more healthy and more efficient, versus just having the paddle and the arm go back, nothing happening with this front shoulder. So two hands on the paddle as it's going back to turn that front shoulder. The next thing is that the player is hitting his forehand from an open stance, so his feet are lined up horizontally as opposed to a more closed stance where one foot is in front of the other in this sideways position. But notice that when he's hitting his forehand, he's having to reach in front a lot to play the ball. And so I actually think that this player could take a step with the left foot, closing that stance up, putting him closer to the contact point, creating a more comfortable situation for himself. So for the incoming ball that he faces, rather than keeping his feet in this orientation and having to reach in front a lot to make contact, I'd like to see him take a step forward to a closed stance position, making that contact point more comfortable. Now there's definitely a time and place for hitting out of an open stance, especially when you face a wider ball or a deeper ball. And so now I'll share a few thoughts on that. So the first thing is you want to make sure your feet aren't too close to each other so that you have some power behind your initial push that initiates your swing on the open stance. Now, I also don't want my feet pointed towards the net because I want to make sure that my hips are turned. This is going to give me extra power. So open stance, but closed hips. So I don't want to be hitting from this position here, but instead I want to be hitting from a position like that. Now to initiate my swing on the open stance, I want you to watch how I'm pushing from this leg. So you can see that I'm bending the knee quite a bit that's on my hitting side, and as my foot hits the ground, that is what initiates the rotation on my swing. As I'm starting my swing, I'm coming out of this bend, getting taller, rotating my body in this direction, and as a result, this leg is coming off the ground. So you'll notice a little bit of that is happening. And that movement is totally natural and acceptable as long as I'm in a balanced position when I'm doing it. So I'm landing in a nice balanced position. At no point during this movement am I off balance. So to recap everything here, we want two hands on the paddle as it's going back, because that's going to turn that front shoulder. It leads to more power, more connectivity, and a healthier swing. The second thing is you want to judge the ball that's coming at you. For the ball that this player saw coming at him, I would have preferred a step forward and a closed stance. He actually hit that out of an open stance where he had to reach a lot to get it, producing kind of an uncomfortable contact point. And then if you are faced with an open stance shot in the future, because that ball is deeper or wider, we want to make sure that our stance is wide enough that we turn our hips, we're pushing into the ground from the hitting side leg, and then that's causing a big rotation on our swing. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned a little bit about the forehand today.